Hey y'all, welcome back to the Free Black Women's Library YouTube channel. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. Thank you for liking this video, and thank you for subscribing to my channel. My name is Ola, and I'm an artist and a cultural worker and a little bit of a media addict. And on this channel, I do Rambly reactions to books, movies, and TV shows that I'm really excited about. And today I'm talking about The Gilded Age, Season 3, Episode 7. The penultimate episode, the second to last. Woo! And these episodes have been popping. And then these last minutes of just cliffhangers, intense moments. This episode, last week's episode, they are doing it. So let's get into it. This episode was written by Julian Fellows and Sonia Warfield, and it was directed by Sally Richardson Whitfield. And the name of the episode is Excommunicated. Now, who is excommunicated? Mr. Ward McAllister. Now, Ward McAllister has not felt like a primary character to me since the season started. He's kind of felt like a B character. We don't really get much from him outside of us knowing that he is connected to all the high and mighty folks of this Gilded Age society. And he has all the inside tea. He knows all the scandals. And what does he do? He decides he's going to write a book all about it. The name of the book is Society as I Have Found It. And as we see in the opening sequence of this episode, it is selling like hotcakes. Everybody and their mama wants to get their hands on this book so they can read all of this tea. Now, why would Mr. McAllister write a book exposing the secrets of all of his friends? Why would he do that? So I say for money, and I say for fame, and I say for clout. He says it's because he wants the lower class folks of society, the non-rich, the non-famous, the non-having clout folks, to see that these upper crusty folks are actually human and they're flawed and they're just as messy as everybody else. But the upper class doesn't want the poor folks to see them as human. They don't want people to know the ins and outs of their lives and the stories of divorce, the stories of cheating, the stories of drinking. They want to keep all that stuff under wraps. They're very much about maintaining appearances, right? It's seeming perfect, seeming like they got all their shit together, because having wealth means that you have all your shit together. Supposedly, that's the idea. That I feel like they want a platform with their fancy gowns and their fancy balls and their menus. Yeah, so Ward spills all the tea, and as a result, he is excommunicated. He's no longer allowed into the clubs. His name is not on the list, and he's definitely not going to that ball. And we have this scene between him and Mrs. Astor where he takes it a bridge too far, and he talks about how he made her, and she was just a sad little lonely wife until he came along. And there might be some truth to that, because the Ward McAllister character is based on someone who sort of formed this hierarchy in society by naming, I believe it was about 400 people who were rich and wealthy at that time as being the people to know and the people to follow. Somehow he thought that writing all of this would suffer him no consequence. Very strange logic, but hey, what do I know? So I'm not sure if we're going to see the Ward McAllister character again, because we barely saw him. But now that he's dropped this bombshell, it's really shifted and changed the lives of our main characters, because now people know all their business. So let's get into the parallel plot lines that are taking place in this episode. The first one I'm going to talk about is the situation with Larian, also known as Larry and Marion. Larry comes back from Morenci. He gets his note, the Dear John letter that Marion left him, and he runs over there What's going on? Why would you write this to me? And at first, Marion is being her stubborn, annoying self and doesn't tell him what the issue is. And Larry's confused. He thinks that maybe his mom did something, which is a rightful thing to think because we know Big Bertha is manipulative. But in this particular situation, Bertha is innocent. He pushes and pushes. He shows up. Ada answers the door, tries to give him the ring. He refuses to take it. And Larry, you know, Larry don't take no for an answer. He's a very determined, righteous young man. He shows up at Marion's job and wants to know what's going on. And I agree. He deserves to know what's happening. He deserves not necessarily closure, but at least, how you just going to dump somebody without no warning or explanation? That's not cool. And I understand why Marion is upset, even though I think her reaction is very dramatic and a little bit over the top. I get the fact that he lied about where he was and what he went to do. That I'm uncomfortable with. But the fact that he went to this sex club, she assumes that he hooked up with someone. She assumes that he was up to no good because he was in a house of ill repute. And thankfully, Jack tells her that all he did was have one drink and leave. So there was nothing that went on. But she tells him, the fact that you lied, I don't know if I can see past that because we had just gotten engaged that day. So I get it. I get that why Marion's upset. I also understand that she has trust issues because of her first 3 relationships and the situation with her dad. But I still found her righteousness and indignation and anger and just the way she dealt with him just still felt over the top to me. But unfortunately, I made the mistake of watching this trailer for the next episode, and it seemed, well, I won't spoil it for y'all in case you haven't seen it. But either way, as it's so on, so be it. That's what happens with Larian. So at least now he knows why she dumped him, and at least now she knows that nothing took place at the house of ill repute outside of a drink and leaving, thanks to Jack. Now, let's talk about George, our favorite robber baron. Is it me or is George kind of hot? He's a fine man, and when his voice gets all deep and gruff, I feel a little something tingling in myself. So, anywho, George Russell, the robber baron extraordinaire, thankfully, thanks to Larry's good news, things are going to turn around. But initially, he stressed the F out. And at one point, Bertha tries to talk to him about the situation with the book, about the situation with the ball, and he is just crashing out as he's been for the last 2 episodes, talking to her in a very rude, angry, dismissive manner. He's not even sleeping in the house anymore. He's sleeping at the club, his men's club. So when Bertha sees him, she's excited because he's back, but he says, I'm just here to pick up some papers and then I'm out. And Bertha wants to know what's going on. And she tries to talk to him, and he's completely dismissive of her. I don't care about your fodder. I don't care about your gossip. We could be in the poorhouse any minute now, and you're talking to me about balls and books. And Bertha wants to know what's happening, and he doesn't tell her what's happening, which is a huge difference from George season 1, where she would ask him about the business and he would tell her. He wouldn't tell her super details, but he was responsive. Now he's completely, And at one point, him and Larry ice her out of a conversation where it's 3 of them, and all of a sudden it's just because it feels like there's just 2 of them. So I'm trying to talk really fast because I don't want a super long video again. Thank y'all for who watch my videos, who leave comments. I appreciate y'all so much. And I definitely hope to get better at this. But anywho, so Bertha's standing there and George and Larry are talking to each other and she's asking questions and they're not even looking in her direction. I don't like that. I understand that birth is a problem and that she forced Gladys into marrying this man, and she has been treating everyone as if they're pieces on a chessboard for her to just move around. But does she deserve to be ignored by her husband and son when she's speaking to them? Does she deserve to be treated as if she's the villain in her own house? She's all alone. I don't feel like they're treating her well, because it's not like she became this manipulative person overnight. She's been this way and you were cool with it. And now all of a sudden she's a villain because it didn't work in your favor. I don't know. I didn't like that. But either way, things turn around because Larry's back with some good news about the copper and the mines and the blah, 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 blah. Either way, the business is not going under. Larry has saved the day. They've cleared things up with Morgan, JP Morgan, and Merrick. All the good deals are back on. And there's this final moment in the office with Clay and the person that he was working for after George fired him, and George. And the man says to Clay, "You are no longer of use to me," because this same land that Clay said was not worth anything is actually worth tons of money. So Clay is sitting there, fired by George, and now fired by the person in his life who replaced George in front of George. Multiple humiliations. Woo. So Clay says, "I'm like a cockroach," because George says, "Well, your career is over, you're done." And Clay says, "I'm like a cockroach. I'll keep coming back. I have 1,000 lives, et cetera, et cetera." The fact that he compared himself to a roach is a problem. But one thing I like about the writing of Julian Fellows and Sonia Warfield is the little bit of the clues and the foreshadowing that they sometimes give us through the dialogue of their characters. And when George said, "You're wrong," something like, "You're wrong again, just like you wanted me to shoot at those men at the mill, here you are wrong again." And there was something about the way he said that that made me remember that Clay is a violent man, because he did want George to shoot at those workers, the mill workers. Y'all remember that? And George did not, thank God. So even though George tries to act like he's a violent man because he said he should have killed Clay, he's really not. But Clay is a violent man. And so who do we think is behind the person who shot George? I'm guessing it's Clay. Maybe there's some type of plot twist. We shall see. But my guess is on Clay. Delivery. I feel bad for the two people who just happened to be in the office at the same time, because I'm sure that the hitman was sent to kill George specifically. So those two men were just collateral damage. So hopefully George is not dead. That was a serious cliffhanger though, but hoping and praying that George is not dead. And what will this do? This will repair any fracture that was taking place within George and Bertha's relationship as a result of Gladys's wedding. Him almost dying will erase all of that, and they are going to be locked in. So I think this is going to mend whatever fractures were in the relationship, this situation right here, him being close to death. Thankfully, Dr. Kirkland is right across the street and will most likely save George's life, which is very exciting that we have this Black doctor saving the life of this wealthy, rich man. So that's George's story. And let's move on to Jack's story, which is super short. Jack buys a house, the end. The main thing with Jack is now he has all this money and he has to figure out how he's going to live as a person on his own, who didn't have a family, whose only family were the other servants in the Forte household. The fact that him and Marion are now friends, that's kind of cute to me. They seem like they have this sibling situation going on where Marion is an older sister to Jack. Jack is a younger brother to her. I like that he told her that nothing untoward happened at the House of Ill Repute, especially where Mr. Larry Russell's concerned. Moving on to the story of Gladys and the Duke. Now, what do y'all think is happening here? I think that Gladys took her mom's advice on how to maneuver and manipulate this situation she's in with the Duke. I think the Duke is a bit of a weak man in that Gladys propping him up as the man of the house, the Lord in charge, the one that all the tenants and farmers are interested in, and her fawning over him and blinking her big, beautiful eyes and acting like she's really interested in his life and what he's about, and acting as if he has the potential to be a great duke. She's speaking life into him, right? It's very gender war specific. And as a result of that, he's getting sprung on her and he's developing a little bit of a spine and a little bit of a pep in his step. So can we call this manipulation? Can we say that they're falling in love? It seems that they're developing a bit of an affinity for each other. I still have mixed feelings about the Duke, but I'm proud of Gladys. I'm proud of the way she's handling this situation. She's turning her lemons into lemon meringue. And Sarah, talk about excommunicated and being out of here. You are out of here, boo. You are out of here. Very sweet moment between Gladys and the Duke when they were walking the grounds and they walked past the irises, and Gladys commented on how lovely they looked. And the Duke talked about how they are the same color of the dress she wore to the opera that night when they first met. That was sweet of him to notice. It was very sweet of him to have someone pick those flowers and put them in her room. So there's something going on between the Gladys and the Duke, and I'm glad that the show is going in a different direction than what happened in history in real life. And I think that we may have, should I do some predictions? I predict pregnancy for Gladys in season 4. I predict that Bertha becomes a grandmother in season 4. And I felt a little bad for Sarah. That actress that plays Sarah is married to the actor that played Oscar, and both of them were acting their tushies off in this week's episode. Because even though Sarah only had a really small scene, did y'all see how her eyes were welling up when they talked about how they don't really need her to be at the house anymore and she can go to London and start to live her own best life? Gladys says, we want you to have fun. Gladys is her mother's daughter because she is really learning the right things to say without sounding outwardly cruel. She's learning how to put Sarah in her place and being, what's the word? Nice, nasty about it. She's learning. She's learning that. And she learned that from Bertha, who's the queen of that. So good things going on between Gladys and the Duke. And I really hope that we get to see the ball, the Newport ball, in this final season. Final season, final episode, not final season, in the finale. I hope we get to see the Newport ball. I really want to see the dresses and the looks. I want to see what Gladys and the Duke end up wearing and so on. But anyway, we shall see. Moving on to the next plot line, which isn't a very deep plot line. This weird little thing with Bertha's maid, Andre, and her being the one that's selling the tea to the gossip columnist for $40 a story. And she has no real guilt around it. She doesn't feel guilty. She says money is money. She just wanted the money. She wasn't doing it to be vindictive or mean as Turner. Remember Turner from season one? She said money is money. Somehow the chef and the head of the house, they all got together and just created this plot and found her out, child. It was it was cute. It was cute, but it didn't mean much. But maybe it'll come up later. We shall see. So next up, we have the story of Oscar. Ooh, Oscar's grief. I am really amazed at how much I have grown and developed empathy for this Oscar character. I felt for him in this episode. I felt so bad for him. I knew that he was going to explode at some point, and I wondered if it was going to be where and when it would happen. I knew he was going to fall apart and fall to pieces at some point. He was holding it together until he went and met with John's sister. And John's sister, who was close to John, knew about their relationship and what it was. She knew that they weren't just friends, they were lovers and in love. He had a picture of Oscar in his drawer, saved next to a picture of him. John loved him some Oscar, and he had prepared himself for death. Apparently, at this time, life was so precarious that people kind of had death plans in place. It was pretty standard to have some type of death plan in place. And John's death plan involved this house and him leaving it to his sister and his sister giving it to Oscar for him. So when Oscar comes back home with this news, he is whew, tired, he's exhausted, he's sad, he's a deflated balloon. He's going through it and he breaks down. He breaks down, and it's in the midst of this breakdown where he says, I sat in the back like a person who was taking shelter from the rain when I should have taken my rightful place, dot, dot, dot. And that's when it becomes obvious. I don't know if Ada and Marion suspected what was going on before, but that's when it becomes obvious to them both that John was more than a friend. And as Oliver continues to cry, Agnes is looking at him, and you can see in her eyes, Christine Baranski, another amazing actress, you can see in her eyes that she starts to understand that John was more than a friend. And we have this moment where Marion and Ada are trying to tell Agnes that the reason why Oliver is breaking down is because John saved him when he was at his lowest. He got him clients, he brought him back to life, blah, 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 blah. Wouldn't you? Wouldn't you? And I really love Marion in this moment, the way she was defending Oscar's grief and sadness. But she was also doing a lot, as she tends to do. And Agnes knew what was going on. They knew what was going on. So they send Oscar up to his room, and Marion comes in and she talks to him and she says, I may not understand what it was that was going on between y'all. I may not have a depth of knowledge around it, but I'm here for you. And if you want to talk to me, and she holds him and consoles him, and he is very grateful, because when you're grieving, it just helps to have somebody there to listen to you cry sometimes, child. And probably one of my favorite scenes of the entire season. Definitely one of my favorite scenes of this specific episode was that moment when Oscar broke down and just goes off. And Agnes is sitting there, and Marion is holding him, and Ada's watching. It was such beautiful chemistry, beautiful dialogue, amazing acting from all four people. So that's Oscar's story. Hopefully he'll be okay. But I think Agnes knows that her son is gay because he's never been married. He's never really had a serious relationship with a woman. And his best friend dies and he's bawling his eyes out. She knows what's going on. Moving on to Peggy. Now, this is amazing to have Lisa Gay Hamilton back again playing Frances Ellen Watkins Harper. And did y'all peep that speech that she made at the Forte house is the exact quote that I shared in my last video. Go me. Look at me being in the minds of the writers of the Gilded Age. I know. Please excuse my delusion. Sometimes I'm a little delusional, but I thought that was such an amazing coincidence. The exact quote that I shared, it's a famous speech. So it's kind of similar to like I Have a Dream, MLK, or The Ballad of the Bullet, Malcolm X, or Ain't I a Woman, Sojourner Truth, which is really not Sojourner Truth, but you know what I mean. So it's makes sense that they would use that quote, but I just thought that was so cool. As soon as she started talking, I said, hey, said. But yes, great to have Miss Frances Ellen Watkins Harper back again. This time she's at Ada and Agnes's house, and it's a suffrage meeting, and we have Black women and white women sitting side by side in this fancy mansion talking about women acquiring the right to vote. Really, really cool. Really, really cool. And I like how Ada and Agnes's house has kind of become this meeting ground, this community space, this pop-in space where people from different walks of life and different classes and different political ideologies and different races are coming in and out and meeting up. I really like how the space is being used. I wonder if it's a sound stage or if it's a location. That's a production design question. But yes, so Ada and Agnes are excited to be a part of this movement. One thing about Agnes is that even though she may seem somewhat conservative and old-fashioned in some ways, she's definitely forward and progressive thinking. Her views around hiring a Black assistant and her views about the vote. So Agnes is she's one of my favorite characters because she's not a villain, she's not a hero, she is a complicated mesh and feels like an actual human being in her ways. I know that she's mean, but she is bitter and angry for a reason. She's rich. She was rich and her son made her broke. Hopefully she will forgive him at some point and not hold it over his head, but either way. So we have Peggy, getting back to the main point. This is why they're called Rambly reactions, because sometimes I lose the plot, but I'm talking about the plot. Talking about Miss Peggy, it turns out that there's a Miss Ernestine who's having tea with Mrs. Kirkland, her beau's mom. And she spills, speaking of spilling tea, she spills Peggy's tea about the fact that Peggy had a baby and that baby died. She so happened to be in Philadelphia when the funeral took place. And Mrs. Kirkland is all in a tizzy as a result. We know that she didn't like Peggy to begin with, but now she has a reason to run back to New York to talk to her son about why he must stop seeing her immediately because she is tainted. Oh, I hate that type of language. I hate that type of language, especially when it comes to referring to a human being. It's very dehumanizing to refer to another person as tainted goods or tainted or spoiled or tarnished. Hello? Oh gosh, like fruit gets spoiled and metal is tarnished, but a human being. Anywho, Mrs. Kirkland, aka Felicia Rashad, aka Miss Huxtable, she rushes all the way back to New York to meet up with her son to tell him this news about how Peggy was a mom and her baby's dead, and maybe she had him out of wedlock because nobody knows if she was really married, et cetera, et cetera. And finally, Dr. Kirkland stands up for Peggy and says she's a beautiful, intelligent woman, and he's going to go find out what the real deal is, right? So he leaves, and she's standing there dumbstruck because I think she thought that that was going to be the end of it, but it's not over. Now, mind you, Peggy did try to tell him last week about the baby, but he shushed her. So she can easily say, I tried to tell you, and you didn't want to hear me. How do y'all think Dr. Kirkland is going to handle this? How do you think he's going to react to this news? I have some concerns. I'm not really sure, but I really want this to work out. I really want this to work out for Peggy. I like Dr. Kirkland for her. I like how eager he is. I like how he gives her that supportive energy. I like that he supports her dreams of becoming a novelist. I like that he's very gracious and handsome and romantic. That first scene where they were sitting in the park and he took her glove and he kissed her hand. Love that. Love that so much. And that's it as far as plot lines, as far as what happened in this episode. So things we're going to see in the final episode of the season coming up next week. My prediction is George is going to live. He's going to be wounded in a really bad way, but he's going to live. Gladys is going to be pregnant, maybe not in the next episode, but in season 4. Peggy and Dr. Kirkland, I'm not sure what's going to happen. Larry and Marion are going to make up and get back together. And did y'all think that something was going to happen between Jack and Bridget, the maid of the Van Ryn house? I thought they had a little bit of chemistry, but maybe it's giving siblings. We shall see. But that's it. Yay, I did it. I really want to see the ball. Please leave a comment. Let me know what you're thinking of the Gilded Age and what are you excited about for this final episode that's coming up next week. And what are your predictions? What do you think is going to happen? What do you hope will happen? I hope Clay gets arrested and gets thrown in jail. And I guess they were hanging people during this time for murder. But yeah, because he took it too far. Want to kill somebody just because of a business deal. I guess it's anyway, blah, 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 blah. All right, y'all. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace. Bye.